Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another of our Catalyst meditations. Um, this one, I want to talk about something that is happening now, something some of you may have participated in. Um, we talked about it a little bit before. Um, and it's the question of where is our focus as a society? Are we focused on what is being born, or are we focused on that which is dying? It it takes something to really to consciously change your focus. I don't know if you've done that in your personal lives, when you literally try to focus away from something, and every single day it seems like the universe keeps throwing that thing at you. Um, if you've been in a relationship and everybody, everything that happens, every cloud that passes over in the sky looks like your former relationship. And you actually, when you get to a certain state, you begin to recognize that you're the one doing that, that you're the one making that these appearances happen. Um, and when you realize that, then you start seeing, oh, there's another way of doing this. There's another connection that I can be making. There's another way I can hold my thoughts. Um, for those of you who have known me for a while, you know my focus is on creating a world that works for all, creating a world that works for all living beings. There's almost nothing in our mutual society, our mutual future, that focuses on that. Almost everything is focused on, how do I make more money? How do I get more stuff? How do I get more what goes for security in this society, but isn't security? It's how do I get more money? Um, Recently, we've been spending an awful lot of time on, how do I vent my anger? Um, Anger at how the society is going, anger at various individuals or various people who may be pulling in a direction that you don't like. Um, Whether you see yourself on the side of the winners or the losers, there's still an awful lot of anger around. And so our challenge is, how do we um, rise above that? How do I get beyond that? Um, well, if you listen to like me, a majority of the people who are around you, and I don't think I live in a bubble. I think that this is kind of like what's going on around me is called life. Um, I consider my apartment my sanctuary. I don't let people in here unless they're holding a particular energy or a particular consciousness. And I don't mean you have to pass a test or anything like that to get through the door. But if there are people who are not in keeping with your uh, your life, why do you bring them into your life? And so that goes to your home. Every once in a while, somebody's got to come in and fix something. So yeah, that those things happen. Um, I back when the coffee house I went to was really packed, it's like, yes, you can come sit with me, but can you kind of maintain distance? Because I'm not afraid of viruses. I'm just afraid of your thoughts. Um, so I was not listening the other day to some people who came into the coffee house, and I heard I knew them, and one of them said, and I think he said loud enough for me to hear it, "Oh, you don't want to go sit with him. He's not going to like our conversation." And they were right. They spent one full solid hour talking about Donald Trump. Isn't he a turkey? Isn't he a fool? Isn't he? He's ruining our society. He's da 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 da. And they did this for one solid hour. And they did it with the practiced ease that lets you know they've been doing this for a while, a long while. This has probably been the one conversation they've had for the last several months. Okay. And after an hour, I had to run to the bathroom, so I had to pass them. On the way back, I said, "How are y'all doing? And tell me what you've created in the last hour." And they were like, it's like, number one, I didn't think you could hear me from over there. Number two, it's like, we ran down Trump. I said, it's like, I know what you did. It's like, what did you create? When the props fall out of the society that we've got right now, and I mean, like, when the economic props fall out, when the social props fall out. Um, I was in Uganda. I was in Kampala a few decades ago, and they had just been out from one of the seven civil wars that they had in a row. Museveni had just taken power, um, and he's still there. So, which means that this is the most stable government they've had in decades. And so nothing worked. A city of 1 million people, and nothing worked. The water didn't work. The street lights didn't work. Um, there are people who showed up at government offices, but the government offices didn't work. Um, and how do you do that? Well, the people in Uganda learned some skills on what you had to do. We have paid no attention to those, to developing those skills, because we don't believe that's going to happen to us. Even in the middle of it happening, we don't believe it's going to happen. Even while it's happening, we won't believe that it's happening. And that is um, too bad, because valuable time is wasting. And one of the most important things that we can do is connect with each other. One of the most important things, I mean, so this catalyst meditation that we're here to do today in 16 minutes, um, is one of the most important things that we can do, is to bring our consciousness together, so that whatever we're doing it together. If whatever you're doing, if you're doing it together, you're going to have a better chance of us, number one, surviving, and number two, thriving, than if you're trying to do it by yourself. And I don't care how much money you've got. I don't care how much money you've squirreled away in all the various squirrel holes that we can put money into. So our challenge is, how do we together create a consciousness that elevates us past all of the stuff that we need to elevate ourselves past. Um, one of the things that people have been telling me um, is that um, Bernie Sanders and AOC, and I apologize every time I say AOC because I know she has a name, and I know that it's a little bit difficult for me to say. And so, like everybody else, I'm falling into a bad habit. Um, and I want to say it's a bad habit of not respecting someone else's culture. Um, um, but apparently, they've gone on the warpath, and apparently, they are fired up, and apparently, they're saying things that are drawing tens of thousands of people out. Um, and it reminds me of a situation that I had some years ago. Um, back when Dennis Kucinich was running for president, um, I happened to be a keynote speaker on a platform that had him on it. It was not a political platform, but a place where both of us were speaking. I don't know if you know, remember the green festivals that would go around the various towns in this country. Um, and it just so happened that he and I were on the same speaking at the same event near the same time. So this is the first time I'd ever heard him live. Remember, I try to curate my consciousness. So, and he was an effective speaker, um, and he had a fired up crowd. I mean, people were ready to hear him, and they were cheering, and I was kind of sitting back, and the people who were there to hear me were kind of sitting back, waiting to hear something that I hadn't heard before in his sound bites and things like that. And so he finished, and he did credible job for his audience. And I got up, and of course, I was brilliant. Um, um, I was I I touched on all the topics that I usually touch on, that we need to change our consciousness, and that we need to change it in a particular direction. We need to create more inclusivity and da, da, da. Okay, and people actually applauded. Um, as it so happened, um, Kucinich and I were staying at the same hotel, and we had a mutual 5 minute break. And so I had 5 minutes to talk with him. I said, I know who you are. And I said, as diplomatically as possible, I said, you made a very credible speech. And I said, but I didn't hear anything that I hadn't heard in any of your news coverage, etc. And he looked at me and he said, of course not. He says, I tell them what they want to hear. And I applauded him, and I still applaud him for his honesty. The question is that what we need to hear? What I already know to hear, and I know my cheering points. And reflecting back on his speech, he said something that my folks woke up and said, "Whoa, that's new. That's interesting." And everybody else went to sleep. Like, what did he say? Um, he said he was talking about our kind of where the society is going, and the directions, the wrong directions that we're taking. And he said, it's kind of like a throwout line. He says, we may need a new constitutional convention to talk about the nature of our society. And the Commonway folks went, whoa, that's a really good idea. And everybody else went, what's that mean? Does that mean I have to work? Does that mean I have to do anything other than cheer and feel like I'm in a soccer match and then at the end of it leave and go have some dinner? You know, does that mean I've got to actually get engaged? And does that mean I have to get engaged with my other? Well, who wants any of that? You know, um, I don't want to fight. I just want to win. I don't want to uh, get involved in the nature of creating a society. Um, something one of my daughters, my eldest daughter, said, um, and I've got it. It was so profound. I have it on a sticky uh, on my computer screen. At some point in time, I don't remember the context. She said, "People want to be part of your result, but they don't want to be part of your process." And I thought that that was profound enough for me to look at every day. And the people who are engaged in the process of changing the consciousness of a society, well, several of them are right here, right now, on the screen. Several of them can't be in this time zone, or this would be the equivalent of you waking up at 3 a.m. for something like this. Um, what I do is I get up at 3 a.m. to talk to them. Um, and oops, I better get a little faster here. Um, I was going to spend some time um, with talking about the difference between a political program and a societal vision. But I don't have the time now. I will take the time on the 22nd of this month, talking about catalyzing the ecstatic society. And I'm not going to talk about that today. But I will say that the cornerstone. So I taught at a college that doesn't exist anymore, Marylhurst College here in Portland, and the head of our department, um, anybody he met with, every time he had a meeting, he says, "I want to tell you what my 5 key visions are," and he would go through each one of them. Um, everybody has a right to be heard. Everybody has and he lived those visions to the point that he said them every time he got together. That meant that he had those visions. He was a holder of those visions. So right now, when somebody, if you go into a meeting with someone, what are the 3 or 5 things that you say you will be held accountable for? Okay. What are the 5 things that you think that our society ought to do? And not just, I'm sitting in the coffee house and, I'm holding my teacup and I think we should all have universal health care. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. No. What are the things that you are dedicated to? Um, I think that the last line of the Declaration of Independence was, "To this we hold, our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." That line is there because each one of the people who signed it knew at that point there's only one direction to go in, and that was to win. They knew what King George was going to do to them by signing that document. The first thing was killing him. Okay, that's the first thing they did was kill him. Um, Drawn and quartered. And if you don't know what that means, it's too early in the morning. We should look it up. Okay. Um, then they take all of your property. So the king now owns your house, owns your lands, owns the whole 9 yards. And then they would take your name. Your children would not be allowed to call themselves Franklin or Jefferson or Washington. They'd have to change their name because the king would own your name. Now, what are we up against? Um, what are we when you say we are pledged to creating a world that works for all living beings? Everybody looks, everybody says, "Oh, that's a great idea," or they look at, well, "What's that mean?" And that's about as far as it goes. So we need, and I think I mentioned, oh no, I mentioned for Tuesday coming, the whole issue of the 3Ds, the direction, the devotion, and the discipline to holding your attention where you need it to be to accomplish the goals that you have set. Not necessarily the goals I've set or anybody else has set, but your own goals. So if I've made a pledge to create a world that works for all, I'm going to stop talking bad about any part of that world. I'm going to stop blaming my problems on others. I'm going to start looking at how do we hold the vision of a holonic society? How do we hold a vision of a society where we consciously think about every single being that's living in that society? I saw two children just yesterday, and they I'm losing track of when you're about this tall. I think you're about 7 or 8 years old, you know. So they were talking on the street, and one of them saw the other one had a ladybug on their shirt, and they focused their energy on this ladybug. They were intent on this ladybug. Now, their parents were just standing there like, what? Why are these kids just standing there staring? And one of them took the ladybug on the tip of their finger, and so the two kids are focused there, and they focused their parents on this ladybug. Okay. And so there's this moment of what I call holonic consciousness, where all of their consciousness was focused outside of themselves, outside of their egos, outside of I'm going to be late for work, and all of them focused on that moment. And people walking by, like, what are they looking at? You know, but Ladybug's too little to see, and they slow down a little bit. Okay. Now, this is just a ladybug. Okay. Um, what happens when we can focus the energy of an entire society on life, and not just a ladybug, but all life, including the life that you kill every day? Okay. We'll get into that some other point in time, and some other time might be at the end of our meditation, which is coming up right now. Um, Folks are starting to come in for the meditation. I am uh, going to start letting people in. Um, and say we really didn't end on a fairly on too conclusive a point. I, I've got my notes here, and I had the discipline to get through most of them, but didn't get through all of them. I am going to do the things that I need to do right now to organize for the catalyst meditation, and I'm going to go off screen for a few seconds in order to do that. Um, and I'm going to ask that you sit tight. So while I do that, and I'll be right back. Oh, and as usual, that was my monologue. We don't have time for you to respond to it, but we will have time at the end of the Catalyst meditation for us to do something like that, to talk about that or whatever else we need to talk about. We had a great talk last week, so maybe we'll have another great one. The pressure is on you to come up with a great one. Um, so I look forward to, I'll be back in a minute or two and we'll go ahead and get started.